Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here then hi, my name is Miss Paris and I'm a newly qualified primary school teacher here in the UK. So today I wanted to come on here with another teacher training interview tips video. So yes, last video I spoke about things not to do in your interview, and today I'm going to talk about things that you can do to actually stand out. Now these are not necessities. You will not fail your interview if you don't do these things, but if you are in a very competitive course and you know that there's not many people accepted into the course every year, then these might be things that you might consider to try and stand out to make yourself look like the best candidate possible. So my first tip is to, where possible, try and go above and beyond of what is asked. So for example, with your activity, if you're not asked to write a formal lesson plan, then maybe if you have time, write a formal lesson plan. It kind of shows that, you know, you've taken the initiative to do that. It shows that you've considered all the different aspects that a lesson is composed of, and it also allows them to see kind of your starting point. Okay, so this is them without any training. Where could we maybe focus on? Or, oh, they've already got quite a good knack, and now it's more about how they deliver it, or maybe we can fix some bits and bobs here, that kind of thing. But it allows them to see kind of where you're at, as well as just showing that you've made an extra effort. And as well, I know that some people have completely different lengths of activities or lessons that they need to run. I've heard some having 45 minutes, I've heard some having 5 minutes. If you're one of those 5 minutes people, then what you could do is to plan the whole lesson so that in the interview you could kind of mention, or if they ask a question, you've already got the answers prepared, what you would do next. So after those 5 minutes, what would you have done to challenge those who finished early, or what would you have done to carry on the lesson, or how would you have assessed their understanding of what you just did, or you know, that kind of thing. But it kind of makes them go, oh okay, so they've really thought this through, they have considered this as a whole lesson. Great. My second tip is to demonstrate knowledge of pedagogy or maybe childhood development. So this is particularly, you know, advantageous in EYFS and Key Stage 1 because obviously the children are developing so rapidly. It's really important to know kind of where they're coming from, kind of where they are in their cognitive development, things like that. In terms of pedagogy, if they ask you a question about what is the best way for children to learn, or how would you engage children in subjects that they might not like, especially in secondary, if you teach a subject that a lot of children might not like, then they might say, how would you encourage a child that flat out refuses? And then you could mention maybe some learning theories. For example, Vygotsky's, yeah, I think that's how you say it, Vygotsky's social cultural theory of learning kind of promotes the idea that a learning environment should be one where children take a very active role in their learning. It's not just, you know, teacher input, teacher talk, and then just kind of taking it in and the knowledge going like this. They need to be very active in their learning in order to get the highest potential possible. So something like that. Another thing I would recommend having knowledge of, even if it's just basic, you know, even if you just kind of name drop in there, although do have some idea of what they do in case they ask you to develop that, is things like emotional regulation, mental health in children. I think we can't teach the children how to emotional regulate or develop their emotional intelligence if we have no idea what that is ourselves. My next tip, number 3, is to have some knowledge, or even better, some experience with SEND children. Sometimes people say SEND, sometimes people say SEN. They both mean the same. That's special educational needs. And I think in doing that, it shows that you have a better understanding of how to differentiate, because if you are working in mainstream schools, you undoubtedly will have at least 1, maybe 2 children, maybe even more, of children that have special educational needs. And so if you have experience, you can talk about that. If you don't have experience, then you can say, as I don't have experience, I did do some research on this because I'm aware where we have this kind of principle of inclusive education. I wanted to make sure that if I did have any children with, you know, dyslexia, ADHD, autism, things like that, that I could help them and that I could kind of understand what they're going through and understand the best ways to support them in their learning. Now, obviously you're not expected to know everything. You're not expected to just be able to list all the symptoms and list all the different interventions or support there is available for them. But even if you just kind of mention that you have looked into it, just shows that you're flexible, you're willing to learn, you're willing to kind of differentiate a lot more, and you will see that when you are evidencing your teaching standards, TS5 is all about differentiation, and you will have so much of that practically with every lesson, so it's a good head start. This next tip might be difficult if you haven't had any in-classroom experience before, but if you have any questions that are kind of around hypothetical scenarios, if it applies to something you have experienced before, then link it to that. Link it to an analogy that you can share with them, and then in answering the question, you can also talk about how you resolve that challenge, or I don't know, it depends on the question, but in doing so they kind of go like, okay, so they've dealt with this before, they know what to do, and it makes you look more prepared, it makes you look more experienced, more ready to become a teacher, and it also kind of gives them an idea of how you would handle something in a classroom. You know, of course, if you've never had experience, they can't judge you on that. They can't say, oh, well, they haven't had experience, so that means they can't become a teacher. Obviously not. But if you have had that experience before, they want to see how you've dealt with it. So if it's a hypothetical question, don't answer as if you've never experienced before. So if they say, what would you do if a child stormed out the room refusing to do the work? Well, if a child, you know, walked out the room refusing to do work, you know, if you've already experienced it, scratch that hypothetical and be like, well, in the past, when a child has done that before, what I did was ... My final tip is one that just kind of brings out the teacher in you, really, and the passion for learning and the passion for children or teenagers is to try and learn the children's name during the lesson activity or lesson plan. I know that some of you aren't doing that at the moment, some of you are doing everything virtually, but if circumstances change or if different providers are doing different things, I would try and learn the children's names. Now, for me, I had, how many children did I have? I can't quite remember. I want to say about 10, 8 or 10. And I just kind of learnt their names on the spot. But somebody in the comments cleverly suggested that you could always bring in some of those little sticker things so that they could write their names, or maybe you could ask them in advance to have some name tags on the table ready. But in just using their names to the pupils, not only does it build that relationship really quickly, but also it makes you look more engaged, more interested in, you know, what they're doing, or, you know, if you want to ask one of them a question, you don't have to point because that's just, it's a bit awkward. So yeah, just learn their names. It looks really good, and that was one of the things that was said about me in my interview, and also when the interviewer went back after to the children to ask them about feedback, they all seemed really, really happy, and that relationship formed really quickly. And one of the cutest things ever was that, you know, I only had them for about 15 minutes, and I gave them the option, would you like to keep, you know, the learning that you did, or would you like to give it to me? And one of the girls left it to me, and on the back she'd written thank you so much, or thank you very much, something like that, with a big smiley face on the back. And I thought, I've only met them for 15 minutes, you know, how adorable is that? And I think in learning their names, it just makes the whole thing more personal. It makes it seem as if you are the actual teacher there and they are your actual pupils, and it just creates a more relaxed environment for everyone, because obviously they don't know who you are and it can be kind of scary for them as well. So I think those are the 5 tips that I would give for standing out. Of course there are more, and if you have any other suggestions, please leave them in the comments below, because I'm sure it will benefit so many people doing their teacher interview in a time where so much is up in the air and uncertain. I think every single tip helps. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Click the bell, because that's when you will get notified of when I upload. I'm no longer doing my regular Monday to Friday. I will try and keep it as consistent as I can, but no promises. So at least that way you will get a notification when I do post a new video. I hope to see you soon. Bye!